Hello everyone, welcome to Mocking Sapien. My name is Tanay and today we are going to talk about the violent farmer protests, then bust some fake news, then see the success rate of violent protests versus non-violent protests. Farmer protests have been going on since the past 2 months on the borders of Delhi and around hundreds of farmers have lost their lives. They are spending the nights in extreme cold, but the government has zero response towards it. And then on the 26th of January, they decided that they would go on a tractor parade. Initially, the Delhi police didn't give them permission, but later they gave them the permission and said that you can drive on this particular route. A particular group of the protesters, some Buddhijeevi protesters, thought that it will be a good idea to enter inside Delhi, break barricades and then enter inside Delhi. And then they entered inside Delhi and clashed with the police. At some places, you saw police beating the farmers up, throwing tear gases, then lathi charge on them. Then on the other side, you saw farmers beating up the police. The police were completely outnumbered and some farmers were even carrying swords. Like, why were there swords? Kya pata? Like, what do you all want to prove by carrying swords with you all?
साले तलवार मार देंगे तुझे मेरे को तलवार लेके कैसे आया तू?
Then the violence didn't even stop there. Some other Buddhijeevi protesters thought that why not enter the Red Fort and hoist a religious flag there? Like, why not? Won't that be a good idea? Then his Sathidar might be like, "Arey kya baat ki hai? Let's go and do it."
Excuse me, sir.
Yes.
But what would happen if, for some reason, we ignore somebody unlocked 100% of their cerebral capacity?
100%?
Yes?
Then these protesters went and put up their flag on the Red Fort. मतलब क्या point proof किया है? मतलब दिमाग हो तो ऐसा, वरना ना हो भाई. ऐसा ही दिमाग चाहिए. This is brilliant idea. Now there are some rumors floating around regarding this on the internet that the flag which they hoisted was a Khalistani flag. No, it wasn't a Khalistani flag. The flag is called Nishan Sahib. It is a religious flag of the Sikhs and it is usually put outside Gurudwaras and all. Then another rumor which is being floating around is that the Indian flag was removed and then the religious flag of the Sikhs was put there, which is again not true. Indian flag was there as it was. They hoisted the flag on an empty pole and another flag just below the Indian flag. But irrespective of this, what they did was extremely wrong. Like, I don't know what they were planning to prove by doing that. So if a Muslim flag was hoisted there or a Hindu flag was hoisted there, people with different groups would start losing their shit. So in the similar way, this was extremely wrong. They shouldn't have done it. Then some other liberals are like, they were out in the cold for 2 months. So many farmers have lost their lives. So aisa to hoga na. It's normal for it to happen. So that is one part of the story that you think that. But from a national perspective, thinking from the whole nation's perspective, it becomes an issue. Because your credibility of the protest goes away. The point which you're trying to convey starts losing the focus. And the focus becomes the violent protest. So for the sake of the protesters, it wasn't a good thing to do at all. Now around 300 policemen were injured in this whole protest. Then one farmer lost his life and many other farmers were injured. Now, what are the results of these violent protests? Around 22 FIRs have been filed in this case and various cases have been put on farmer union leaders, irrespective of them trying to calm down the public or uksawing the public. So it doesn't matter over there. Now this has happened, so this was bound to come. Can't help it. Then 2 farmer unions quit the farmer protests and went back to their places because of this violence. Then Sanyukta Kisan Morcha broke ties with the unions which were involved in this violence. Now there is a flip side to this violence. While we saw a lot of violence in Delhi, the other side to it was at the Chilla border, the farmers were giving roses to the policemen.
There are roses being distributed here. This is unlike any other protest site. Roses being shared with the police.
Then in another place, the farmers were going by their usual route on their tractors, the way it was planned to go.
अराजक तत्वों ने हिंसा ना की होती तो आज इन तस्वीरों पर बात हो रही होती।
शायद हिंसा ना हुई होती तो बात ही नहीं होती, लेकिन आप देख सकते हैं कि तय रूट पर भी बड़ी संख्या में ट्रैक्टर मौजूद हैं और परेड धीरे धीरे चल रही है। इसमें ठहराव है मगर अफरा तफरी नहीं है।
Now this is what sends the real message. You keep your head above all the trash which is there down. Now the Sarkar will do whatever they want to do. But if you create violence, you give them a tool against you. But the issue is that these few who created the violence, that is going to tarnish the image of the whole protest. Anyway, on the other side, people are just ready to catch a point which they can use against you. So the Godi Media and the government both have tools now to go against you. Now let's come to the part of Deep Sidhu. Now Deep Sidhu was an actor who rallied for BJP in the support of Sunny Deol. So he was a part of this farmer protest. Farmer unions had barred him from giving speeches at the farmer protests because he was diverting attention. Now he was present at the hoisting of the religious flag at the Red Fort, and he was broadcasting that through Facebook Live, and it clearly shows that he was a part of this violence. So a proper investigation must be done in this case, because there's a chance that he was the one who was inciting violence. So by chance, if this thing is true, then it can help the farmers to revive their protests again. Now let's come to the violent versus non-violent protests. A study done by Erica Chenoweth talks about a 3.5% rule, that a protest must have 3.5% of the population. Then it almost guarantees the chance of succeeding. Obviously, this is just a theory, but kind of true. Then they studied non-violent protests and violent protests from the year 1900 to the year 2006. And they found out that non-violent protests have double the chance of succeeding than violent protests. While violent protests had a 23% chance of succeeding, then non-violent protests have a 56% chance of succeeding. Obviously, this is not the only factor which is necessary for the protest to succeed. There are other factors like, how strong is your point? Is it conveyed properly to the public? Is it changing the perception of the public? That also does matter, but non-violence is a major part in it. Another study done during the Black Lives Matter protests which had happened in the USA, they found that people were ready to support the Black Lives Matter protests as long as the protests were just about chanting things or raising slogans rather than clashing with the police. So people wanted to join the protest only when it was non-violent. Then another study was done where the researchers showed a particular group of people an anti-Trump protest, which was non-violent. And then they observed that a few people from that group started to support Trump, a very few. Then to another group of people, they showed an anti-Trump protest, which was violent. And they observed that maximum people from the group started supporting Trump because of it. So this shows that violence can have a negative impact on the protests. So not even positive, not even neutral, a negative impact. Now this has happened with these farmers' protests. Because of this violence which happened there, a few did the violence, but it has become the focus and it has kind of lost its credibility. But obviously we can't ignore Modi's government's arrogance and ego in this whole case. Since 2 months they are sitting in the cold and hundreds of farmers have lost their lives, but they don't give a shit. Ultimately, they don't give a shit. मतलब इतने मोटी चमड़ी के ना, I can't tell you, like, I've never seen a government like this. Like, कितना ego ना, छोड़ी दो. But now the issue is that they have got a tool against you. And the Godi Media also. They were just ready from before only. Since the past 2-3 months, they were going on saying Khalistani, terrorists, this, that, they aren't farmers only. Now they have got another tool against you. Now you can literally see the news even right now what it is. This is the case.
किले की प्राचीर पर अपना झंडा गाड़ रहे थे तो कई गंभीर सवाल खड़े हुए थे। अपने वहाँ पर हथियार भांजे थे। हथियार
रैली का नाम और दिल्ली जलाने का काम, भड़काऊ गैंग से वसूली कब होगी?
किसान आंदोलन से जुड़े 2 संगठनों ने अपना आंदोलन खत्म करने का ऐलान किया है। गणतंत्र के गुनहगार आखिर कब होंगे गिरफ्तार?
पुलिस वाले इतने घायल हुए, 300 पुलिस वाले घायल हुए, और आप लोग पुलिस पे ब्लेम कर रहे हैं किसानों की, इन गुंडों की बजाय।
जिस मॉडल के आधार पर दिल्ली दंगा पार्ट 2 किया गया, ये पूरा शाहीनबाग मॉडल था।
दोस्तों, इसकी जिम्मेदारी कौन लेगा, पूछता है भारत। दोस्तों, मैं शुरू से कहते आ रहा हूं कि आंदोलन नहीं है, ये एक प्रयोग है, एक्सपेरिमेंट। अब कहां है राहुल बाबा?
The Godi Media is gonna be like, हमने बोला था, they are खालिस्तानी, they are terrorists. तुमने सुनी नहीं, आप तो हमें Godi Media बुलाते हो. अब क्या हुआ? So this is how it's gonna be. Now farm laws का repeal गया तेल लेने. All the focus is just gonna be on the violence. हो गया, finish. Hope the farmer leaders somehow manage to adapt a new strategy by which they can convince the people, because now it's gonna become difficult to repeal these farm laws. And that's about it. Thank you everyone for watching the video. See you guys in the next one.